Hello everyone. In this lecture, we will be discussing about the various agreements and conferences in a very detailed manner because till now in timeline we have discussed them in a brief manner. So let us start. So at first, we'll be discussing the 1972 Stockholm Conference. So as you can see from the image, the then Prime Minister of India, Srimati Indira Gandhi ji, also participated in that conference. So let us start. First, you should know that the conference is also known as World UN Conference on Human Environment. So the conference not only focused on environment but also on human aspect that we should know. That it also focused on environment as well as the human aspect. Right. The conference took place from 5th June to 16 June 1972. Now this 5th June becomes very important because due to this conference, the World Environment Day is now celebrated on 5th June every year because this conference was organized from 5th June. Okay. Some of the focus points that we should know about this conference is firstly, that 26 principles to protect environment were given. Now, what are these 26 principles? We do not need to study them in very detail. We do not need to by heart them. You should just know that 26 principles were there. Some of the principles I'm telling you are that first was we need to save environment and wildlife. Another principle was we need to save natural resources. So I'm just writing NR. Also, we need to protect human rights. I'm just writing HR because the conference also focused on human issues as well as environmental. That is why it also gave one of the principles as to protect human rights. So these are some of the principles out of those 26 principles. These were the focus. Okay. Another thing that you should know is very important that climate change was not the main agenda. The main agenda was environment. Because at that time, climate change was just the emerging issue. It was just an emerging issue. It was just an emerging issue. It was not the main agenda because not much was known about climate change at that time. Today, if you discuss environment, you will discuss climate change in a very detailed manner. But at that time, not much was known about climate change. So it was not the main agenda. Okay, this is some of the mistake which candidates do in examination. So please remember that climate change was not the main agenda. It established UNEP, that is United Nations Environmental Program or United Nations Environment Program. Again, a very important point. You should remember this, that UNEP was established after 1972 conference. And lastly, issue of climate change was discussed for first time. Though it was not the main agenda, but it was discussed for the first time in this conference. Okay, this you should know. And after this conference, when Indira Gandhi ji returned to India, many of the national legislatures to protect environment were passed in India. Okay, such as Wildlife Protection Act, 1972, Project Tiger was launched. So Indira Gandhi ji, the then Prime Minister of India, took many steps. One more step that was taken was that initially this forest was in state list, in our constitution. This was transferred to concurrent list, from state list to concurrent list in our constitution. So this was another step which was taken to protect the forest in a better manner. Okay, so many steps were taken by then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ji to protect environment. Now let us move ahead. Let us move to the second conference, that is the World Climate Conference of 1979. So why this conference? Now this conference led to better study and understanding of climate. Okay, this is the significance of the conference, that a better study and understanding of climate took place. So let us see. So this conference was convened by World Meteorological Organization WMO with UNEP, UNESCO, International Council of Scientific Union. So these were the conveyor of the conference. Now the focus, which is very important that you should know, the focus was to determine physical basis of climate system and improve our understanding of climate information. So physical basis, that how climate systems work. Okay, how climate system works, what is their physical basis, how do they interact with each other. This was the focus, that we need to determine this. And we need to improve our understanding of climate information. We need to better understand that how climate information works. So basically what it wanted to say is that you study about the various climate systems, okay, their physical basis, what it is. Then you develop some models. Okay, that how do they work. A modeling is done. And from this modeling, a better understanding is developed. From these models. This is what it wants to say. This was basically the focus of it. Okay, to better study and understand the climate. Okay. And this was one of the major things which led to the formation of IPCC in 1988, because the IPCC, the work it does is only study about climate. This is the major work of IPCC. What it does, that is study about the climate. And the full form of IPCC is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That is the full form. We will be studying about IPCC. It was a major step towards creation of IPCC in 1988 due to this conference. Okay, this was a major step. So now moving ahead about the World Climate Conference, let us see. It established the World Climate Program. World Climate Program was also established with 4 components. Now you should just know what are the 4 components. We do not need to study them in detail, so I'm just telling them in very brief. The first is World Climate Research Program was established. Okay, if you want, you can further search about them, but it is not needed as far as our examination are concerned. We just need to study them in brief. Then second one is World Climate Services Program, which does climate data monitoring and climate applications and services. Third one is Global Climate Observing System. Okay, and the last one, that is the fourth one, is PROVIA, where that is the Global Program of Research on Climate Change, and VIA stands for Vulnerability, Impacts and Adaptation. Okay, this is the full form of VIA. So these are the 4 components of World Climate Program. So World Climate Program was established, this you should know, and it had 4 components. Okay. Now again a very important commission, that is the 1983 Brundtland Commission. Okay. Now the image that you are seeing here is the photo of, or the image of, Mrs. Brundtland. She was the then Prime Minister of Norway, and she headed this commission. She was the head of this commission. In 1983, she headed the commission, and that is why it is named after her, the Brundtland Commission. Okay, so now why is this Brundtland Commission important, that we should see? Okay, it is the United Nations set up Brundtland Commission in 1983. It is also known as Commission on Environment and Development. So it was set up in 1983. UN set it up in 1983, and the commission gave its report in 1987 titled Our Common Future. So this is very important, and you should remember that Our Common Future was the report given by the commission. Okay, this is sometimes asked in exam directly, that what is the name of report, or what was the name of report. In 1987, it gave the report Our Common Future. Now, why this report is important is that, okay, we have already discussed. So what happened was that before the Brundtland Commission, or before the concept of sustainable development, because this Brundtland Commission gave the concept of sustainable development. This Brundtland Commission provided the concept of sustainable development. So before this Brundtland Commission, or before the concept of sustainable development came, what was happening is that there was a debate that if we go for development, then we will harm the environment. And if we go for environment, if we try to protect environment, then there will not be much development. And this was one of the issues before the world, especially before the developing countries, because which have just achieved their independence after World War II. A great number of countries had just achieved their independence after World War II in the 1950s and 60s. So what Brundtland Commission said is that you go for sustainable development. You go for a kind of development in which you do minimum harm to the environment. In which you do minimum harm to environment. This is what sustainable development is all about. You do minimum harm to the environment. First thing. Second thing it said is that the development should be such that, let me rub it a little bit here. The development should be such that the needs of current generation are fulfilled. Current generation are fulfilled without harming the needs of future generation, so I'm just writing FG for future generation. So needs of current generation are fulfilled without harming the needs of future generation. So I've just written FG for future generation. So this is the meaning of sustainable development. One, that you do minimum harm to the environment. The development should be such that it does minimum harm to the environment and the needs of current generation are fulfilled without harming the needs of future generation. That care must be taken that future generations also have the resources for their use. So this sustainable development concept, okay, it did not put an end, but somehow it tried to provide a solution. It did not put an end, but somehow it tried to provide a solution on the debate of environment versus development. Okay, so he somehow tried to provide a solution on a debate of environment versus development. And this is what it is all about. So our common future report was given by the Brundtland Commission. First, it was argued that countries should come together. So all the countries on the earth should come together and unitedly fight for the cause of sustainable development. And what is sustainable development? I've already told you. So you should come together and fight for the cause of sustainable development. Also, it gave the definition of sustainable development, that what is the very definition of sustainable development. So these two things were given. And it was argued that from now on, all the development which will take place on earth would be sustainable development. Okay, from now on, all the development which should take place on the earth should be sustainable development, it was argued. Okay. And hence, it tried to solve the issue of development versus environment. So from now on, all the development which will take place will be sustainable in manner. Okay. So now let us look at IPCC, that is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So 1988, it was established in 1988, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. Okay. So IPCC was established by WMO, World Meteorological Organization, and UNEP. A very important point that you should know. Okay. It does not publish its own report. This is very important. It does not publish its own report, but various reports published by scientists are assessed by IPCC. This is a very important term that you should know, that it assesses the various reports published by the scientist. It will not publish its own report. That is why the reports given by IPCC are known as assessment reports, AR. Until now, 6 assessment reports have been released by IPCC. We will be seeing that. So you should know that IPCC does not publish its own report. It assesses the various reports. Okay, but various reports published by the scientists are assessed by IPCC. Various reports published by scientists are assessed by IPCC. This is very important. Okay, so far it has published 6 assessment reports, 6 ARs. So let us look at them one by one. So the first assessment report was released in 1990. Second one in 1996, AR2, AR3 in 2001, AR4 in 2007, then in 2014, AR5, and then the recent one, AR6, was released in 2021 and 22. Now this AR6 had 3 parts and one more part. Okay, let us see them. So first report was climate change, which was released in 2021, the physical science basis. Okay, this was released in August 2021, the physical science basis, climate change 2021, the physical science basis. Second report was climate change 2022, impacts, adaptation and vulnerability. This was released in February 2022. Then we have third report, that is climate change 2022, mitigation of climate change. This was released in April 2022. So in this AR6, 3 reports were released. And one more report was released, as I was saying. This is the synthesis report. This is the synthesis report and will be the last of the AR6 products and is scheduled to be released in March 2023 to inform the global stock take under the UNFCCC on climate change. So as we have discussed, a global stock take which has to happen under the UNFCCC, will be discussing that in detail, but I've already told you what global stock take is all about in detail, in brief. Okay, so in brief, I have already told you in last lecture. So it will release in March 2023 to inform the global stock take under the UNFCCC framework. Okay. So I've already told you in brief, we'll be seeing in detail what global stock take is all about. So synthesis report will be released by IPCC. Okay. So these are the reports under AR6. So you should just know that there are 3 reports and a synthesis report. This can be asked in examination. And if possible, try to just remember their headlines. Okay, what are their names? That impacts, adoption and vulnerability. The third one is mitigation of climate change. So if you can remember their name a little bit, okay, even if you just remember the mitigation, because mostly it will be a objective type question. So you should just remember that the third report talks about mitigation, second report talks about impact. Okay, first report talks about physical science. So even if you can remember this much, it will be a good thing for you. And fourth report, that is the last one, is synthesis report. And you should know that it is an assessment report. Okay, it assesses, IPCC assesses the various tasks. It does not does its own tasks. This is very important. Okay. Now for IPCC, you should also know that IPCC releases NGGIP. Now what is the full form of this NGGIP? This is National Greenhouse Gas Inventory Program. Okay, this is National Greenhouse Gas Inventory Program, NGGIP. Now what this does is that it helps countries to estimate their greenhouse gas emission and absorption. Okay, this program provides for method for estimating national inventories for greenhouse gases, that is their emissions and removal from atmosphere. Okay, for estimating greenhouse gas emission and removal from atmosphere. This program provides for method for estimating national inventories for estimating greenhouse gas emission and removal from the atmosphere. So what it wants to say is that suppose I have a factory here. Okay, I have a factory here. Now this is releasing some amount of gas, greenhouse gas. So suppose if there's a device which measures this greenhouse gas emission, and you are here holding this device with your hand. Okay, so you will be holding this device with your hand. Now it will become very cumbersome for you to continue holding this device, okay, all the days in a years and calculate the amount of greenhouse gas. And it may happen that it may not give you the true value. The device may not give you the true value, that how much gas is getting released and what amount of carbon, what amount of sulfur, what amount of nitrogen is getting released. Okay, so it may happen. So it is a very cumbersome process to go to every factory and measure their amount of emissions, what is taking place. So that is why what we do is that we just estimate that how much greenhouse gas is released by a factory, by a number of factories, or by a state or by a country. So this is what it is doing. So it provides a way to estimate or to assess the national inventories of greenhouse gases, that how much emission is taking place and how much removal is taking. This is what it does, because it becomes very cumbersome for you to go out there and see that how much gas is released by each and every factory, each and every motor vehicle. It will be very hard. It will be nearly impossible. So that is why what we do is that this NGGIP provides a method of estimation of emission and removal. Why removal? Because we will be planting some trees also. So due to these trees, greenhouse gases are removed. Okay, where suppose if you do this, there's a solar panel. If you install a solar panel like this, so due to this also some greenhouse gases will be removed from atmosphere. So it provides for emission as well as removal, how much emission and removal will take place. This is under NGGIP. I hope this is clear. So similarly like World GHG Inventory Program for Asia is there. Okay, World GHG Program for Asia like NGGIP, but this is just for Asia and it is an initiative by Japan. Okay, so these are some of the facts that you can write down. All right. So now moving ahead, in next lecture we'll be seeing a very important topic, that is 1992 Rio Earth Summit. Now this is a very big topic, so I'll be just taking it in next lecture. This lecture I'm ending now. In this we'll be seeing Agenda 21. Okay, under which we'll be seeing UNCCD forest principles are there in Rio Earth Summit, Rio Declaration on Earth and Development. Okay, then Commission on Sustainable Development, very important again, Rio Plus 10 which happened in Johannesburg in 2022, and Rio Plus 20 which happened in 2012 in again Rio de Janeiro. Okay, and at last we'll be seeing about Global Environment Facility. So all this comes under Rio Earth Summit. So it will be a very comprehensive lecture. So I hope you understood this lecture. In next lecture, we'll be starting with Rio Earth Summit. So very thank you for this lecture.